Look, these are, I regret to say, troubling times for the state of Israel and the Jewish people. Given that, the discussion that follows will not only be informative, it will also be deeply important, I believe, to all of us. Now, let me say a few words about my friend Ari Shavit. His award winning book, My Promised Land, is in my view, the essential read on Israel. It's a work of scope and brilliance. During the past year, in response to the growing polarization in Israel sparked by the new Netanyahu government, Ari has worked tirelessly to bring about a unity government to try to heal the divisions. The war has actually led to that, and Ari is very close to some of its members. In short, today we hear from a man who knows whereof he speaks. Ari, over to you.
Thank you so much, Paul, for joining us this morning. It's not trivial, and I really appreciate the fact that so many distinguished people care about what's happening in this country. So really, let me begin just on that point. I think it's very important to understand that this horrific war is not only about Israel. It's the most dramatic war we've experienced since 1948. But it's also about the Jewish people, and it's also about the free world. We are really all in it together. It matters definitely for the people of Israel, but it affects all Jews around the world. And I think it has major implications on the lives of all free people in the free world. I went to visit Kibbutz Kfar Aza and Kibbutz Be'eri, where the atrocities happened. I thought I knew all about it, but when I came there, I walked into another planet. You walk into these kibbutzim, and at the beginning, at the opening, it's like a utopia. It's a Jewish democratic utopia. It's a free society utopia. And then when you enter deeper and you come into the neighborhoods that were attacked, it's like hell. It's really like a different universe. You know the stories, but when you stand there and eyewitnesses tell you how 7-year-old boys and girls were sitting on this lawn, were handcuffed, shot, and 2 of them were beheaded, you understand that this is something we never experienced in our lifetime. Now, what's so striking about this, that this vicious attack happened in the one place where Israel did exactly what the international community demanded of it to do. This is the one place where we ended occupation, dismantled settlements, and went back to the 67 lines. So it's not the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, it's not occupation, it's not nothing of that. It's a brutal, vicious attack on Israel as a frontier democracy, on Israel as a free society. All humans are sacred, but the people in these peace-loving kibbutzim and in this life-loving party were Israel as part of the free world. People who wanted Israel to have the life of Western Europe, of Manhattan. And they were killed and slaughtered in the most horrible way because of that. So what we are faced here is something of a completely different magnitude. In my mind, the crux of the matter is the new threat to our world, which is people with 11th century values acquiring 21st century capabilities and attacking our 21st century world. This is what it is about, and we'll talk about it later. This is you can connect it to a nuclear Iran, and you connect it to 9/11. But this was the eruption. You saw, as President Biden said, sheer evil in a combination of ISIS barbarism, Nazi sadism, and incredible evil genius. This is something we did not think we will encounter in this day and age. So in my mind, this war doesn't have a name yet. October War, we are in November, October 7th War. I really think that this is the battle of Israel. Meaning, first of all, for us as Israelis, it's an existential war. What these barbaric terrorists did is take us back in time to 1948. We are fighting now again for our very existence. It's worse than all the previous wars. But it's also the battle of Israel, because it's a bit like the Battle of Britain. For years, we've been suspecting that Iran and its allies are a kind of new Nazis, but we didn't totally take it seriously. But now, this is a kind of, we don't have a Churchill in Israel, but it's a true Churchillian moment where we are in the front, but what will happen here is relevant to all freedom-loving people in the world. So we've seen already, and we'll talk about it, about the impact about Jewish life throughout the world, in Paris, in London, in New York, and we'll talk about that. But I really feel that the most important point is for all people of the free world to understand that we are all in this together. Israel is really the canary in the coal mine. What we are experiencing now is the poisonous gas that affects us right now, but it will affect all Western countries and all democracies should, God forbid, we fail in defeating it. So it's back to basics. We lived in many illusions. We had many, many wrong paradigms. We were disconnected from reality. We'll talk about that. And this is a terrible, terrible wake-up call, saying that once again, the free world is in concrete danger, and Israel is a frontier citadel. We must survive and win for ourselves, but for the entire free world as well. I wish I knew. So let's begin. The facts. Look, we know that the Israeli forces are surrounding Gaza City. We know that it's a tough battle, but it's not. It's still the beginning of the ground operation. It's still early stages. We know the Israeli army had some success, but I think there's a lot of danger ahead. We'll discuss it. But if you'll allow me, Nicole, I want to look again for those of us who've been with us a few weeks ago and just, to take the count to see where we are. In a sense, what's the state of the war. The first 3 days, we were in shock and chaos. Then came nearly 3 weeks where we're in deep agony, pain, trying to internalize this calamity, but gathering our forces in many ways, civilian society, the army, so we were burying our dead while building our muscle. And then this ground operation began a few days ago. Now, the good news so far is mainly what didn't happen so far. We don't know what will happen an hour from now. But so far, we didn't have a northern front with Hezbollah, which was the main danger. So far, we didn't have a major eruption of Palestinian uprising or terror in the West Bank or riots within Israel. Israeli society didn't crack the way our enemies wanted it to crack. On the contrary, it proved to be very resilient, strong, and inspired. And the Israeli IDF that was in the first 24, 36 hour, taken by surprise. It's a bit like the Tet Offensive in the Vietnam War. We were like, and now you feel that the army, we not only mobilized people, but the army is functioning, and at least regarding Gaza, tactically things are going well. And the main good news, which we will discuss, is America, America, America. I don't want to try to imagine what would have happened if America did not respond in such an impressive, decisive, quick manner in the first days. I think the chances of a lot of the things that did not happen, of them happening, were very, very high. So that's the good news. The bad news is, and I want to emphasize this because I think that with the media coverage, people tend to see it as an Israel-Gaza war. But we are already in a regional war. The missiles coming from Yemen to attack Eilat are a first indication of a regional war. So thank God it's not a fully blown regional war, but it has a regional dimension. And again, for those of us who don't know the facts, Iran encircled Israel with 5 different proxies who are very sophisticated. So they have their militias in Yemen, in Iraq, in Syria, in Gaza, and the worst one in Lebanon, Hezbollah. So thank God we don't have 5 fronts yet, but the tension is all around. It's like bubble. The second problematic fact is that we don't yet have a decisive answer to this vicious combination of rockets, tunnels, and sophisticated guerrilla. And no answer yet to the hostages. And the fourth problematic fact, which you know better than me, is the erosion of Israel's legitimacy. While we are fighting the most just war possible, the world has a difficulty of understanding how just this war is. So within this context, I think it's so clear that it's so important to handle the Gaza element we need a very decisive victory, but a wise victory. I must say that personally, I would have preferred some creative, sophisticated approach that would have not taken us into a kind of heavy ground operation, which is quite risky. I hope I was wrong, and I hope that the Israeli army will prove, that it found a way to deal with it. But if you ask about the end game, obviously the result you want is as few as possible civilians hurt and a total destruction of this underworld, evil world they built under Gaza. You have all these terror tunnels, this terrible labyrinth of terror with tens of thousands, definitely thousands of Hamas terrorists. And if there will be a way to destroy that world and then let the people of Gaza come back, that will be the best outcome. Is it possible? We will see. If you ask me, just to end this question, if you ask me what should be the end game of the war, if I was the Israeli cabinet, I would say the goal of the war is to have overwhelming Israeli deterrence. Without deterrence, you can't live anywhere, and definitely not in this neighborhood. Overwhelming Israeli deterrence, which allows us to go back to forming a regional peace that will address the Palestinian issues and enable us to reform Israel profoundly. That, I think, should be the goal. Right now, we are in this first stage, and there is a kind of suspense because, as I said, it's not that bad, but we don't know what tomorrow will bring. So if I may, I'll begin with my own opinion, then I'll talk about the Israeli government and about Secretary Blinken. In my mind, the solution is a wartime peace initiative. I'm not naive. I don't think that tomorrow we can have peace, but we have to make it clear that the war's goal is peace. that at the end of the day, we don't hate the people of Gaza. We want to destroy Hamas, which is an evil fascist organization, but we want to free the Palestinians from the rule of Hamas. We want a Marshall Plan, possibly led by the Saudis and the Emirates in the Gaza Strip, and we want it to be part of regional peace. And we want our moderate Arabs to support the Palestinians in the West Bank again, and we want Abbas as part of it, even if he's not the solution. He's not the one who will save and rebuild Gaza. In my mind, my personal opinion, I think I said it before, that take someone like Mohammed Dahlan, who's a Palestinian leader supported by the Emirates, give him Gaza and let us build Gaza. That can be a kind of solution. But the main thing is to launch an initiative, an American-Israeli initiative, that proves to the world that we are, while conducting a fierce war, which we must win, and in which we must be tough, we cannot surrender and we cannot be weak here. But we have to know all the time that we are on the right side of history. And we are good, and we fight for democracy as a democracy. So I think it's essential to have such an initiative. And I'm very happy Secretary Blinken is doing his best with the moderate Arabs and now with the moderate Palestinians. I fear that some people in the Israeli government, I think that the people I'm closer to in the cabinet totally get it. They understand this. I think that some of the people on the right have a difficulty in understanding how essential this is. And you can understand that Israelis are so in shock. They're so terrified. They're so, look, this is an attack on your sanity. When you experience something so insane, something so inhuman, you're in danger. Your soul is in danger. So I understand why many of my fellow Israelis are so angry but we must be cold-headed, and we need this balance of being forceful and tough while having a kind of political, diplomatic umbrella to this war that will give us the legitimacy needed in order to win it and then to lead it to some sort of positive outcome. So first of all, regarding Egypt and our Arab neighbors, I think we have to understand that eventually Gaza is, if we understand it, it's too big a problem for Israel to solve itself. We cannot do it, and the Palestinians of Gaza cannot do it themselves. So I think the need to build some sort of international consortium, and definitely to have the Egyptian contributing to this effort after the war, and the Saudis with all their money, and the Gulf countries, I think that's very much essential. We have a kind of coalition of the moderates in the Middle East. Everybody has to contribute the day after the war to the rebuilding Gaza in the right kind of way. We can perhaps talk about what it might be like. Specifically regarding the humanitarian issue. Look, first of all, there is, usually chutzpah is an Israeli thing. There is kind of chutzpah here when you not only you kidnap people, you kidnap babies, and you kidnap grandmothers, and you don't give any information about them, and then you expect us to be humanitarian. So let's call a spade a spade. This is kind of classic hypocrisy. And in a sense, and on the moral level, we have every right to say, until you release at least the babies, the children, the elderly, the sick, at least you release them. I mean, don't talk humanitarianism to me when you are committing such an unhuman act that is really, in this sense, like worse than the way prisoners of war were treated in World War II. Having said that, because it's Israel, and I think we have to keep the moral high ground, I would be more generous regarding humanitarian aid to the people who are now suffering, and most of them are in the southern part of the Gaza Strip, regarding medicine and food. I will be much more strict regarding fuel. If there is a way, the best way to end this war in a decisive way that causes minimal pain within the whole terrible pain that the people of Gaza suffer now, it's to have Hamas have a fuel crisis. The fuel is the essential. This is how they keep their tunnels. So we must provide fuel to the hospitals, obviously, but I would be very cautious. Fuel is critical strategic element. And if we actually, if they'll be fuel starved, that will be the best way of defeating them and ending this war relatively quickly with less pain. So I would be generous with food and medicine. I would be much more strict with fuel. There are a lot of efforts. First of all, there is a lot of intelligence efforts, Israeli and American. Actually, the IDF appointed one of the best officers we have to run, not the government. The government has another guy, but the army actually appointed a brilliant general to deal with it. And if there's a person like I hope will surprise us with some good news, it's that guy. His name is General Nitzan Alon, a very, very impressive Israeli general. So there are efforts, there are diplomatic efforts. Qatar is key, of course. I still think, and I think I said it previously, I think the key is Qatar. Again, if there is an international community to speak of, the international community should go in Qatar and say, you guys want to be legit? You finance all these terrorists. You knew what you were financing. The very least you can do, is free all hostages. Definitely all civilians, but I would say all hostages. And then we'll talk. So I think that Qatar is the key, and it has to be a kind of stick. Sadly, carrots won't work here. And we need to put military pressure on Hamas and diplomatic and economic pressure on Qatar. It is unacceptable. We'll talk probably about universities and so on. It's unacceptable that you have such legitimate activities, sports, academia, economics, all that happening in Qatar. And at the same time, they are financing the new Nazis who are keeping these 240 hostages. Unacceptable. So I think the real way to free the hostages is Qatar, is putting strong pressure on them so they know they cannot have it both ways. If I may, if you let me, because I'm a bit emotional, but let me speak a bit about Hamas. I mean, obviously, these people, look, the reason there is strong cooperation between the PA with all the problems, the Palestinian Authority and Israel, and there has been for 17 years now, is because when the Hamas took over the Gaza Strip in a kind of, they first won elections, it's exactly the Nazi scenario. They won the elections, but then they had a kind of coup to make it a dictatorship run by them. They threw the Fatah people, moderate Palestinians, from the rooftops of the 20th story. They killed them brutally. So all the moderate Palestinians who don't like Israel so much, and they have some grievances about Israel, any day prefer Israel to Hamas. So this is just to tell you that all these people who are thinking that Hamas is the Palestinian people, this is ridiculous. Any reasonable Palestinian who wants a life, who wants modern life, who wants liberty, who wants his daughter and his wife to have freedom, who wants his gay life to have a reasonable life, he knows Hamas is far more dangerous. Although Israel was the historic enemy, Hamas is much more dangerous. Hamas is the ultimate enemy of the Palestinian people. Basically, what is Hamas? It is sacrificing millions of Palestinians so it can slaughter millions of Jews. It oppresses Palestinian women so it can rape Jewish women. It persecutes elderly Christians so it can kidnap elderly Jews. And it executes young gays in Gaza so it can slaughter in the most vicious, ugly, disgusting way hundreds of life-loving youngsters dancing. And when I see some of the distortion, the BBC distortion, and without getting names, some of the American media distortion, I say, won't you guys wake up? Won't you wake up? So you have grievances, you Netanyahu and the settlers and Israel's mistakes. Fine, partly right, partly wrong. Never mind. This is not the issue. As President Biden put it so bluntly and clearly, this is sheer evil. Sheer evil. And the fact that there are still people who don't accept it, who don't understand it. I saw what happened with the coverage of the attack of the tragedy of the hospital, a few weeks ago in Gaza. What did you see there? Why were leading news organizations, without mentioning names, why did they make such a horrible professional mistake? Why did they say that for hours, they said that Israel killed 500 people? Why did they do it? Because that's a comfort zone. Because we are so used in this new culture to blame Israel, definitely, but to blame the West. If it's not blaming the West, it's not interesting. Guys, wake up. There is such a thing as called third world evil. We all want third world to succeed, but sometimes there are evil phenomena. Address it for what it is. The need to run away from that into the comfort zone of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and all these issues are fine. We have to address them a day after the war. But now we are confronted with a phenomena that combines ISIS barbarism with Nazi sadism. And they are clever. They have high capabilities. If, God forbid, Israel will fall, Europe will fall. And you will feel it in America. No decent person in his right mind can look at this evil phenomena and have any doubts. So you want to criticize the way Israel is handling the war? Fine. You want to criticize the Israeli government? I'll join you. But see what it is. Hamas is evil. And unlike what we experienced in the past, again, the closest is the 9/11. But just imagine 9/11. First of all, the numbers are about 15 times or 13 times the 9/11 numbers. But imagine 9/11 with Al-Qaeda in Mexico and Canada being its greatest ally. We've barely begun. So faced with such an evil, dangerous phenomenon that wants to take our world back to the Middle Ages, to the Dark Ages, you are not willing to confront the fact that it's so vile, it's so inhuman, it's an attack on every value we have. Sorry for my emotions. After speaking somewhat emotionally about Hamas, I want to be emotional in a very different kind of way about America and about its president. I spent a year as a boy in sixth grade in New York, and it was the late 60s, and everybody was it was radical time, and I was like the most patriotic pro-American boy in class, and I think I was right. America saved the world in World War II. In a different way, America saved the world in the Cold War by preventing it becoming World War III. And now we need America to save the world again. And what President Biden did, I've no words to describe my sense of gratitude, but my sense of admiration. Because America made many mistakes in the Middle East in recent years with the Iraq War, we can talk about. Here, within a day or two, they totally realized what it is about. They were not confused. They had moral clarity. They had the guts And what was done by America, and is still done to this day, is astounding. And I'm sure, and I'm not getting to American politics, and I'm sure there are people here who don't like President Biden and will vote someone, it's fine. I'm saying, I hope America on this issue, and not only Israel, about this crisis, will unite in a bipartisan way behind President Biden. Because it's his finest moment. It's one of America's post-war finest moments. And we essentially need this leadership. Now, if you'll allow me, I think that the reason that President Biden acted the way he did is not only because obviously he loves Israel sincerely, and he says, you don't have to be Jewish to be a Zionist, and obviously you see his emotions, and he's a decent, loving Israel, but that's not the only issue. There are two other major issues. What the White House realized is that we were all expecting the first flashpoint of the new Cold War to be Taiwan. The new flashpoint, the first flashpoint, not the first because we had Ukraine, but the important flashpoint of the new Cold War was in Be'eri and Kfar Aza, in southern Israel. Because what the White House realizes that it's not only Israel. You have definitely the Russian-Iranian radical axis with the indirect or more remote support of the Chinese. And this is what makes it so dangerous, because you have this brutal organization on the ground, but with supports of regional power and world powers. And you see it with the intelligence, you see it with the sophistication, you see it in all kinds of, you see the footprints, fingerprints everywhere. So what President Biden understood, that one, Israel is in danger, and he stood by Israel and he stands by Israel. Two, he understood that he has to confront this new axis, the Chinese, Russian, Iranian axis, which endangers everything. And then there was a third element. As I said, there was vicious, evil genius in the way this was planned. We all, because we all live in democracies, and we all didn't want our sons and daughters and grandsons and granddaughters to be in wars. So we didn't want boots on the ground, and definitely after Iraq. So the West built a concept of defense, which is a kind of high-tech defense concept, all based on intelligence supremacy, on air forces, cyber, standoff weapons, all this. And we thought we are safe. We thought we found a solution. These evil forces, and it's obviously not Hamas, they just executed it. They detected all the Achilles heels of the Western concept of high-tech security. So when I say that if Israel is in danger, the West is in danger, it's not metaphoric, it's not a cliche, it's a very concrete thing. So President Biden, in a kind of amazing, and I don't want to offend the people who don't like him in American politics. I'm telling you, what was done here already, it already prevented a horrible regional war. And we all need to stand and support this man, this president, and his administration. And again, I hope it'll have bipartisan support in America on this issue, because it's so crucial. It's going, and perhaps it's no mistake that it's an older gentleman, because he still has, World War II, he didn't live it, but the ethos of World War II, and definitely Cold War ethos. So he did not get lost in he didn't lose the plot. He immediately, within hours, days, realized what's at stake. And thank God, we have most of the leaders of the Western countries, the German chancellor, the British prime minister, the French president, all getting it. So you have a gap now where the Western establishments and leadership, they get it, while so many people with a confused public opinion and a problematic media don't understand what the war is about. So again, the term eliminate Hamas is I would love them to be eliminated, but as a war goal, it's a bit, Hamas is an ideal. So you want, again, if I were putting the goals, I would say, I said what my general goal would be. The goal for Gaza will be total demilitarization. After what we've seen, we cannot have weapons in Gaza. That's it. And we cannot have this reign of this regime of evil controlling. These are, in my mind, the two goals. I mean, we have to weaken Hamas as much as possible. Whether you can totally eradicate it, I wish. Okay, I hope so. But the feeling I get, or it's not only feeling from what I know, is that America and even some of the other European powers quite get it. They understand that we cannot have Hamas around because of all the reasons I mentioned. But they want the war to be carried out in a more, call it sophisticated or moderate. I mean, the goal is the same goal, basically. But they want it run in a way that, again, that gives the war legitimacy. I'm split on this issue. On some of the issues, I understand why we have to be very tough here. But on some issues, as I said, I think you can strive for decisive victory, being very powerful and forceful, while being wise and not getting into the traps that Hamas and Hezbollah want us to walk into. And America, I hear, made some mistakes after 9/11 because of the emotional turmoil. We shouldn't make the same mistakes, and it's much more dangerous for us. So I think that you need to keep the legitimacy element. What Hamas and what the Iranians want, actually. They want many fronts. They want Palestinian intifada. They want the collapse of the Arab-Israeli peace, and they want Israel to be a pariah state. We should not play into their hands. We should fight as a democracy in a very resolute way. America in 1944 and 1943 and 1945 fought decisively, but you have to fight as a democracy. And I think the Americans are trying to say that, and up to a point, they have a point. So first of all, we have to understand that Hamas is just a part of a puzzle. Basically, what happened is that Iran built and excuse my third or fourth compliment to their evil genius. They surrounded Israel with definitely 2-3 bases of terror by our borders, and 2 that are a bit more remote. Their concept was Israel has air superiority and technological superiority, so we will use guerrilla, we will use infantry, but very well trained infantry with very sophisticated weapons on the one hand, and rockets on the other hand, in order to eliminate Israel's advantages. I'm telling you that if they had gotten to their moment of action in a systematic way, Israel's very existence would have been at stake right now. If we would have had a coordinated attack, Hezbollah in the north, Hezbollah is Hamas on steroids. It's about 10 or 20 times stronger than Hamas. So if Hamas did that, imagine what Hezbollah could have done, and it surprised us. So within this terrible tragedy, there is actually the fact that it's only one main front prime, is we are like lucky, and as I said, a lot of it is because of the Israeli reaction, mainly because of the American reaction. So Hezbollah is so far deterred. They have a kind of low intensity conflict in the north. They don't go. The goal number one should be not having that front now, because that will take us to a totally different sphere. And again, if they imagine to ignite all these fronts, it's a cataclysmic event. It's a cataclysmic event which we have to prevent. So let us understand that on the one hand, Hamas is an evil terrorist organization, as I said, but it's part of an octopus. It's part of a much larger scheme. And thank God, that's what I said at the beginning, so far, the worst case scenarios that we feared in the first days did not happen so far. We have to make sure that they don't happen later on. Just explain in a second, if I may. Hezbollah is a terror monster. Terror monster. Their capabilities are, we should have never let this happen, but we did, we all did. So there is, between Hezbollah and Israel, there is a kind of mutual deterrence, which is a bit, it resembles what you had in the Cold War of MAD, of mutually assured destruction on a conventional level. I mean, the damage they can cause us is dramatic. And if they do that, as the Israeli leaders say, we will have to bring back Lebanon to the Stone Age or something like that. So what kept the peace, or not the peace, the northern border calm, is this deterrence. The danger is that there is the temptation for each side to strike first, because there is a huge advantage if you use these capabilities first. So what the aircraft carriers, what Gerald Ford and now the new ones that have come are doing, they're making it clear to Hezbollah that there will be a second conventional strike, that if they manage to hurt Israel in a horrible way, they will not be able to get away. And this is, the element of deterrence is dramatic there. I think that vis-a-vis Iran, there are probably hints that if it will endanger its nuclear project, its strategic assets, and so on. So again, the good thing about the Iranians, I said many bad things about them, is they are calculated. They are messianic and rather their goals are evil, like messianic evil. But they're very smart, very calculated. They don't want to take risks. I mean, the Iranians like to sacrifice others. They don't like to sacrifice themselves. So I think that this move of the American move is really what prevented this horrible eruption. But don't, let us not be calm. The danger is constantly there. Escalation is possible, and we don't know where this is going. This is hanging. I mean, this will make the Gaza element of this war. It will grow. It's on a totally different scale. And again, once again, thanks to President Biden and the American leadership, this was thus far prevented. I wrote a book that I didn't translate yet to English 3 years ago. That actually anticipated some of this and talked about the disintegration of Israeli society and the state. And I made there the distinction between, a bit like the French phrase, like between real Israel and political Israel. Well, political Israel is dysfunctional in many, many ways. Real Israel is really inspiring. And I had many examples of that when I wrote it 3 years ago. The Israeli vitality, the high tech on the one hand, making the family the kind of free version of family values in Israel. The vitality is astonishing. Now comes this horrific event, and that distinction becomes so clear. I'm telling you, the Israelis are amazing. Amazing. I grew up on admiring the Brits doing the Blitz. What's happening here everywhere? There was a major protest movement that was, anti-Netanyahu, anti-government, called Achim Laneshek, Brothers in Arms. Within a day, they transformed themselves to one of the best substitute welfare state organizations. Rather than being a protest movement, they're supporting all the people in the South who lost their homes. And they are, when I went down, there were guys there looking for the cows of the Kibbutzim who were spread in the fields. They're doing amazing work. By the way, there are some organizations on the right like that. My neighbors who came from Russia not long ago and are very well to do, they shouldn't care about nothing. They spend all their days feeding soldiers in the Golan Heights, cooking hamburgers for them. Everywhere, the psychologists helping the people who suffered, the hostages' families, the victims' families. Everywhere, Israel is mobilized. We were never so proud of ourselves for good reason. Israel is totally awash with this blue and white sentiment that we will not surrender and together we shall win. This is everywhere, and it's not just cliches. It's the mobilization of Israeli society is astonishing. It's like it's the 2nd October surprise. Okay, the first one was the viciousness of Hamas. The beauty of Israeli society, of the Israeli human, is the Israeli individuals and collectives is everywhere. Our politics is exactly the opposite. So definitely there is a Netanyahu issue, and I'll address it, but it's wider and deeper. For years, and this is one of the lessons when perhaps we'll talk later about what we should learn, we've neglected our state. The good people went to high tech and to business. We totally we don't have worthy leadership. We have a dysfunctional political system. The civil service is in decay. So now Israeli society has to help Israeli citizens because there is a total failure of the state. So this is the over, and this is the lesson we'll all come out of. Again, I was writing about it years ago, but now it's so clear that we have to take this amazing energy of the Israeli people in order to transform the Israeli body politic. Specifically, I'm very happy we have this emergency cabinet that Benny Gantz and Gadi Eisenkot joined. If they were not there, I don't know what would have happened. The country would have never trusted Netanyahu with his responsibility and with all the suspicion regarding his motives and so the fact that we have just by joining the war cabinet, we have some sort of unity to a degree. We have more international legitimacy, and we have meritocracy. We know that there are people, there are good people running the war. Some of them, not all of them, but I think it's not enough. If the war is either long or will get worse, or both, there are only two options. I mean, many people in the center left want to get rid of Netanyahu. I mean, Netanyahu is like politically is a dead man walking. I mean, there's no way Netanyahu will survive this. But there is some pressure of people, to replace him right now. I think that there are only two options. If he could have been replaced in a very elegant way overnight, fine. If not, if it will get into a kind of political battle over him right now, that's very dangerous. You can have a kind of 1917 Russia scenario. You don't want that. So the alternative, again, is either that happens, or the alternative, which I would recommend, is that Yair Lapid, head of the opposition, and Mr. Lieberman and others will join the government. So we'll begin fixing the government during wartime. We cannot wait just for the day after the war. We need to rebuild the civil service. We cannot win the war with a totally dysfunctional government. So it's either or in my mind. And right now, if you ask about where the country is, the anger regarding Netanyahu is huge. The rage. I mean, he lost the support of many of his supporters. But my sense is that people try to, they want to keep the unity. People are look, in a sense, I'm not a religious person, but if you want to take it, we were punished for this sin of internal division. I mean, this is how the Jews destroyed themselves in the past. And this is what we did. We did it for 20 years, and we did it especially in this crazy year when it was so clear that the outcome will be a terrible war, and we were blind to see it. We were just focused on hating each other. So now there is a sense of people, with all these amazing stories about the victims and about the families, about the volunteering. People don't want to go back to that internal hate that brought about this catastrophe. I'll begin with a memory that I have. When My Promised Land was published, and I had my tour first of Jewish communities, I was struck by the fact that 7, 8, 10 times in different cities, in New England, in the West Coast, in the Midwest, older Jewish gentlemen or ladies stood up, at question time, and said to me, almost with tear in their eyes, Ari, you have to realize that when the state of Israel was established in 1948, my life has changed, each one in his own American city. Suddenly, the people in my rough block, because at that time there were a bit less privileged and successful Jews, and people had suddenly I was respected in my rough neighborhood by some of the rough people around. So the fact, and I will go back into anti-Semitism, the fact the Jewish diaspora, especially the North American Jewish diaspora, but all Jewish diaspora, is essential for Israel, and Israel is essential for the diaspora. And we tended to forget it, especially our governments and our politics are tending for it, but it's so clear we are in it together. So the old cliche of we are one, we're not one, but we are brothers or sisters or cousins, and we are part of an extended family. And if Israel is in trouble, all Jewish communities will be in trouble, and vice versa. You cannot run away from that. So let me separate the two issues, although they are connected, and I'll try to be brief. As you know, I know the campus issue. When I was going around campuses, I visited nearly 50 campuses in America, and I think 7 or 8 in the UK. And I saw the problem everywhere. I remember specifically a wonderful liberal, gay, really progressive, amazing lady in a leading Ivy University. I don't want to mention the name. Who, when she talked to, who happened to love Israel, and when she talked to me about her love for Israel, she closed the doors so her colleagues won't hear. And I said, "What is it? Is it 1950s Stalinism? What's going on here?" And I cannot forget the number of experiences I had. Specifically, I remember Brown in Berkeley, of young Jewish women and men, 20-year-olds, crying, literally crying, because they were confronted with this viciousness, and we didn't prepare them. We didn't give them the tools. There was a kind of Jewish establishment story narrative that you were supposed to follow, which totally did not encounter the world that they are encountering there. We didn't prepare them. And they were in pain. They were collapsing personally. And this is a time that was relatively calm. So I saw how horrific the problem is, years ago. And I say to all of us, definitely Israel didn't help these youngsters, but also the American Jewish establishment didn't help them enough. I remember, actually not in America, but in Cambridge, meeting a young lady who was a Jewish activist. She was a kind of liberal activist, and when we came out of a meeting with a brilliant young Cambridge Jew, she said, "Ari, think of it." She said, "I had Rabin. Rabin gave me inspiration. Israel in the last 10 years, 15 years, didn't inspire these kids. We didn't give them something to hold on to. And then they are attacked viciously, and we expect them to be our warriors, our ambassadors. And they are confused. They don't know what to do." So what you have in campuses, in a sentence, I think it's a general malaise of what I said before, the inability to confront evil that is not Western. The way Edward Said conquered the intellectual world and created a situation that is not only regarding Israel, that you cannot address. First of all, you cannot think in a free way. You cannot feel in a free way. You cannot express your thoughts, and you're expected all the time to blame the West, to blame America for everything. And then comes Israel, which is the perfect, scapegoat for this, because it's a combination, the colonizer, all this. I don't want to say what I want to think about that all that. Now you have a combination of ignorance, viciousness, populism, and then you have anti-Semitism. You have anti-Semitism, and then I saw it personally how it was coming. So I think again we should have dealt with this deeply years ago. I'm so happy there is a kind of wake up and there's a pushback now in such an impressive way, but it has to be done in a very sophisticated way, because it has to be in concepts that are relevant to these youngsters. We cannot speak to them in terms, of my generations and previous generations. So we need to forge a narrative that will help them deal with this horrible thing. Regarding anti-Semitism, I'll say something sad. We had a golden era since the end of World War II, where anti-Semitism, well, there was always anti-Semitism, but there was, in a terrible way, the Holocaust was a kind of chemotherapy to this cancer. And as the decades went by, the chemotherapy became less effective. And now it's back. Now, what's so vile about it? There are two elements. One is the inability to accept that Jews are like others. That's anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is a combination of Jews are subhuman and superhuman. It's a kind of combination of admiration and contempt. You cannot accept that Jews are like others. And so that applies to the Jewish state. The Jewish state cannot exercise its right for self-defense because Jews don't have a right for self-defense. And, so that's the one element. But there is another element which is even darker, really sinister. There was something here about the fact that we were slaughtered that actually evoked some of the darkest feelings regarding us. And that's horrible. And it's out there, you feel it. The fact and this is what the bottom line is so clear, we have to be strong, whether in Israel, America, Europe, wherever we are, but we also really have to have the moral high ground. It's this combination of realism, strength, and the moral high ground. That's the Jewish formula, and that's essential. It's essential for us to survive, because I don't want to say the golden era is ended, but the golden era is challenged. And it won't be as easy as it was in the 1980s and 1990s and 2000s. We are stepping into a new world where the issue of anti-Semitism is here to remain, to stay. Yeah, I hope it won't be as bad as it, and I'm sure it won't be as bad as it is now. But we have those of us who thought that the problems that our grandparents had and our great-grandparents had, going to these boys and girls on the block in 1947, back to reality. We are a minority. We have amazing things going for us, and I think I love our people, but we are an endangered people, and we wanted to forget about it, and we cannot run from that truth anymore. As I say, don't get into that debate. Netanyahu is gone. Netanyahu is gone. I mean, Israel had, again, I think I said it before, Israel had 4 prime ministers during war. Golda Meir in the 73 war, Menachem Begin in the first Lebanon war, Ehud Barak in the second Intifada, and Ehud Olmert in the second Lebanon war. They were all gone a few months after the war. And no war was as horrible as this one. And there was never such a failure. So part of the problem, and this is one of the reasons that I thought Netanyahu had to resign for his own good and for the country's good, like 5 years ago, is that even if you think he's so talented, the country was totally crazed. We didn't care about anything. We just admired Netanyahu or hated Netanyahu. That was it. We didn't deal with our education, with our health, with our security. Obviously, we were just obsessed with that. So that's unhealthy for a democracy. That's a democracy in the life. So he should have resigned. Again, I'm sure he regrets it. By the way, like Golda Meir, who regretted not resigning before. Now his legacy is tarnished. But I try, and again, I listen to the soldiers, to the reservists who go to the army, and say, give us the good news. We want something positive. So let's not. I hope the politicians will find a way to deal with this problem efficiently, so we can win the war decisively. But in order to win the war, we have to be inspired with Israeli society and not depressed about the Israeli politicians. I'm sorry to say it. I mean, obviously we are in the front line, but we are all in this together. And I think we are all shocked. So we are shocked because there's potential danger everywhere. We thought we are safe, and we are not safe. And we have to rebuild our safety. But all Jews throughout the world are in danger. I mean, anti-Semitism is all around. We are. It's a kind of a perfect storm. So we have to change our paradigms and our concepts, which is not an easy thing to do in such rather quickly, and rebuild our ideology, our soul, our personality to address this. I think that being very adamant in fighting anti-Semitism and realizing that there is a vicious anti-Semitic attack right now, not only on Israel, but on all Jews, I think that's critical. By the way, we didn't discuss it, on what's happening on social media is no coincidence. I have no doubt that there is a lot of Qatarian money and possibly Russian talent doing this. I mean, this is too sophisticated, too powerful. It's not just some radical groups here and there. They prepared not only the attack on Israel, they prepared the attack on social media, or using social media, in order to brainwash mainly American youngsters, but American public opinion and European public opinion. Let's put it this way. Israel will win this war politically if the people of the West, of the free world, understand it's a second Ukraine. If they'll perceive us as a second Russia, we will lose. Sadly, we don't have a Zelensky. And sadly, because of mistakes done by right-wing Israeli governments over the years, and even more so in last years, it's difficult for people to identify with us and to see how just this war is. So I think it is essential for strategic reasons, moral reasons, political reasons, to make it clear. We need moral clarity. We need people in Ohio and Oregon and the Netherlands and Spain to understand what the war is about. And I said what I think the war is about. But the issue of occupation, settlements, Netanyahu, ultra-Orthodox, ultra-nationalists, all these issues blur things, and people don't see the clarity of the situation. They don't see that we are facing this horrific evil force. This war is we're all in it together. And so first of all, I think that whatever can be done to support to support Israel in this moment of unprecedented challenge is essential, but we really have to go back to this sense of one people fighting one war together, and this sense at the end of the day, unity is crucial. The Jewish people have so much talent, and we don't have the talent of unity. The internal division have endangered us throughout history. So we must now really get over our differences within our communities, between the diaspora and Israel, and really, stand together against this tsunami which is attacking all of us. Let's pray for better days, and let's do our best so we will have better days.